Fellowship of the Ring? More like Fellowship of the Kings. Look at these guys. Yeah, look at them going to Mordor, saving the day. They're
My king.
Lord of the Rings is a fantasy epic that takes place in the glorious land of New Zealand. I mean Middle-earth. The film adaptation is universally loved, with the trilogy being hailed for its mostly faithful recreation, rich characters, and near-flawless long-form storytelling, and Elijah Wood's hairy feet. However, potentially the most impressive feat of this trilogy is the production design, with each film in the trilogy either winning or being nominated for a major visual Academy Award, such as Best Visual Effects or Costume Design. The world feels alive, and the detail captured is beyond impressive. If there was one place I would want to live, it's probably here. But these detailed locations serve a more significant purpose than just looking pretty. In fact, they are critical to the storytelling of the trilogy. For the sake of brevity, and because this is the only one I've rewatched in my recent marathon of the trilogy, we'll be looking at the use of location in the Fellowship of the Ring. So, follow me into Middle-earth and see how location serves a purpose far beyond eye candy in Lord of the Rings. As we've discussed many times before on this channel, John Yorke's 5-act structure is what I believe to be one of the most versatile and applicable ways to look at stories. Split into 5 distinct phases with specific roles for each, the 5-act structure has helped me organize film structure for basically every movie I've watched in the past year. Yorke splits the acts like so. Act 1 as a time of normality until the inciting incident, aka Crisis of Act 1, catapults the story. Act 2 has the characters pursue a goal based off of their weakness and desire, where their beliefs are tested and character development truly begins. In Yorke's words, this is where things can no longer stay the same. Act 3 holds the midpoint, the moment of the story where the character sees their need for the first time and they make a choice they cannot come back from, launching the story into a new direction. Act 4 is the crisis, the lowest point for the hero where their fundamental beliefs are challenged and change is required. Death often clouds the air. Act 5 is the reawakening, the point where the protagonist faces an embodiment of their flaw and they must enact the change they learned at the crisis point. Okay, got all that? Because we're about to discuss how Fellowship of the Ring uses locations to facilitate these roles and organize acts. Act 1, we're in the Shire. Frodo is the main character, but he isn't quite here yet. Bold move, Mr. Jackson. However, we do gain a sense of normality of the Hobbit's daily life, showing the audience that the Shire is a representation of comfort, and for our characters, someplace they want to leave. For the time Frodo is here, he says he wants to cut off the Shire, and from the second we see Bilbo, he's trying to skip town. The Shire holds back adventurers with its normality and comfort, so naturally, the inciting incident of Frodo gaining the ring blasts him outside of the Shire, along with Samwise, Merry, and Pippin. Meaning, the first act ends with leaving the Shire, and the next thing that happens is Jesus, Mary and Joseph. And they make it to Bree, the housing city of the Prancing Pony. Clearly, these locations are far different from the comfort of the Shire and hold a host of challenges for our hero, meaning the location of Act 2, the Prancing Pony and outside world, serves the purpose of the act. Act 2 ends when Frodo is poisoned, a mini crisis of the second act, and wakes up in the elven city of Rivendell, where after questioning his desire to adventure because of the nightmares he faced in the second act, he decides to take the ring to Mordor and the Fellowship of the Ring is born, aka the midpoint. Let's go! Let's go! The fourth act begins when the ragtag group of adventurers are trapped in the dangerous mines of Moria, where the heroes face their crisis in the form of Gandalf's death. Frodo then comes to a realization at Parth Gelen that he has to leave the group and go to Mordor by himself, meaning it's fifth act time. Although there are some smaller locations like trails, the Mountains of Caradhras, and Lothlorien, the use of locations is clear. Each act is separated by the arrival and departure from a very distinct location that serves the narrative purpose of the story. This makes the film incredibly easy to follow while still feeling like a grand adventure. But this is just the tip of the mountain of Sauron or something. Having clear goals for characters is key to making a comprehensive viewing experience. If your characters don't know what they're doing, then the audience is going to be on another plane of confusion. Luckily, Fellowship of the Ring shows how to clearly display goals. Make them locations. Adventure stories are all about journeys, so it's only natural for a high fantasy adventure like Lord of the Rings to focus on heroes traveling across a massive and mythical landscape for a really, really long time. This allows the audience to clearly understand when the characters are or are not making progress, and further helps organize the film into distinct acts. For example, Frodo is told to leave the Shire and head to the Prancing Pony. When they arrive, we rejoice, but when learning Gandalf isn't there, Aragorn gives them a new location to travel to, and therefore a new goal. At every location, the characters are told to go somewhere else and do something at that location in a very direct way. it's impossible for the audience to miss what these characters are supposed to be doing. Because the path to their goal is so clear, any deviation from that path is understood as an obstacle, which in any film is used to create conflict and engage the audience. For example, their trip to the Mines of Moria is understood as an obstacle, and therefore exciting, because 1, Gandalf said it's dangerous and we listen to Gandalf, but also 2, it's divergent off the main path. Because the goal was so clearly defined as go here, when they can't go there, we understand that something big just happened. In this way, locations in the journey to other settings act as turning points, moments where the audience goes, oh, so now they gotta do this. In the same way, we know a character has achieved their goal when they arrive, such as when the gang conveniently makes it to Rivendell. Again, this allows for a clear understanding of the journey for the audience, but also amplifies the presence of act breaks. Act 1, they leave the Shire, and we know it's Act 2 when they reach the Prancing Pony because they satisfied their initial goal. The beginning of the second act is identified by Aragorn telling them they have to go to Rivendell, and the act ends when they arrive, and this continues with every subsequent act. Using locations as goals is a powerful tool for easy story consumption, allowing the audience to become more invested in the narrative. And when the locations are this magical, also more immersed in the world. This is more of an aside, but still definitely worth mentioning, so please don't leave. And while you're here, why not like the video and subscribe to the channel? It's a new low for me, begging for likes like this in the middle of the video, but getting desperate. In his book, The Anatomy of Story, John Truby talks about the symbolic significance of setting. Most notably for our case is how locations can funnel to a more condensed area to express danger and increase stakes. As stated before, the Mines of Moria is the location of the crisis point. So it is no coincidence that the mines are indoors and action scenes take place in some of the more dark, claustrophobic areas of the film. Adding to this, the locations become more menacing when facing challenges. Why is every attack on the group done in a place where there's a ton of old rubble, it's incredibly dark, and there's mysterious fog? Because the locations serve the purpose of the narrative. When characters are in a situation that tests their beliefs, they are placed in a scary location with an ominous atmosphere, often in a tightly confined space. The settings organize the film into acts that each hold a purpose in the narrative structure, therefore reflecting the character development of Frodo, as there's a very distinct character moment at each of the places they stop. Again, with location organizing the film's structure, the various settings of the film both track and reflect Frodo's development as a character. In the first act, the character's weakness, want, and need are usually established in an environment that displays normal life. Frodo's normal life takes place in the Shire, a representation of comfort, and also the exact thing he doesn't want. This comfort is reflected through the visuals. Who wouldn't want to live here? The lush greenery, cozy hobbit holes, and dreamlike breeziness is the visual representation of the word comfortable. But Frodo doesn't want to live here. He wants to go on an adventure. He believes in leaving the Shire and going on a journey because it seems fun, and that's his weakness. Frodo is naive, and because of this, dependent on others when reality hits. He doesn't know what a real adventure is like because he's clouded by the comfort of the Shire. So when the second act begins, his beliefs are challenged and changes required. The locations reflect this. The first thing that happens when he leaves the Shire, signaling the beginning of the second act, is Frodo coming face to a ghoulish hellscape with the danger and adventure really proposes. When he reaches the Prancing Pony, Gandalf has vanished, therefore testing his weakness of being dependent on others. Again, look at the visuals. The Prancing Pony is portrayed as a scary new world with low-angle shots making the hobbits feel even smaller in this claustrophobic bar. The pouring rain and dark atmosphere perfectly contrast the Shire and visualize the challenge that Frodo has to adapt to. In this way, the location serving the purpose of narrative structure also clearly outlines Frodo's development. In Act 1, he's comfortable in the Shire hoping for adventure. In Act 2, his beliefs in adventure are challenged, when his weakness of naivety and dependence are exposed. This leads us into Act 3. Rivendell. Here, Frodo expresses his concerns of being too big of a baby to Bilbo and even says he's going home with Samwise. But it's also here where we see Frodo's need for the first time. He needs to accept responsibility, become independent, and go on a true adventure, or else the ring will never be destroyed and Sauron will win. Naturally, at the midpoint, Frodo makes an important character decision of bearing the cross that is carrying the ring, and the Fellowship of the Ring is formed, sending the story into a new direction with more fun just down the road. So Act 3 begins at Rivendell. Frodo's beliefs are tested until he makes a character-defining decision, and it ends with the group leaving Rivendell. Act 4 begins with the group facing challenges while traveling and being forced to enter the Mines of Moria, the crisis of the journey and the place where Frodo's weakness is truly tested, as it is here where Gandalf dies and Frodo's dependency is thrown out the window, marking the end of Act 4. Not to be redundant, but visually, this is the place a crisis point would happen. First, it's a scary cave, then a gravesite, then a hellscape. Again, visually contrasting the normalcy of his once comfortable life in the Shire, in the beautiful safety of Rivendell. At this point, Frodo is a wreck. He's at his lowest low and cursed with the knowledge that he holds, but struggles to embrace. He has to be independent or he will fail. Right after this, they escape the mines and make it to Lothlorien, where Frodo falls victim to his weakness once more, allowing the ring to be taken from him, before coming to his realization and facing the fact that he must continue his journey, aka Act 5 has begun. His climactic moment of change comes during the final battle of Parth Galen, where Frodo decides to leave the group and travel to Mordor alone, successfully overcoming his weakness of dependence, lack of self-confidence, avoidance of responsibility, and naivety, in order to chase his new goal. Man, this guy has a lot of weaknesses. Well, almost. The movie ends with the much braver Frodo and Samwise leaving the gang and staring down Mordor, the most menacing location yet. Through the use of setting, Fellowship of the Ring doesn't just provide a magical backdrop, but serves a complicated story on a silver platter, ready for any audience member to indulge in. From eye candy to character development, these locations hold many different roles in the story, and they're one of the various reasons you should return to Middle-earth. One of the reasons you probably wouldn't want to return is because of all these bad guys. There's kind of a lot of them over there. Oh well, guess I'll have to watch the next 8 hours of the journey. I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.